Hello, everybody, and Happy New Year, Kelly. How's it going, man?
It's going great. Although actually you're kind of spilling the beans for us here because this episode won't be out until like February or March. But
Happy
but
spring break, Kelly. How you doing, man?
well, I got my crop top on and my Bud Light, and I've got my flip flops. I'm down in Port A.
You got
I'm
your
rocking
Spud McKenzie shirt on?
my Spuds McKenzie shirt. That's right. Happy spring break, everybody.
Happy spring break, everybody. I got a good episode for you today, Kelly. You know, the one of the last episodes I did, I told you that I had to start catching up with the 28,000 famous people that there are, and even more dead famous people than that. And
Yeah, we have a big pool.
I cheated a little by doing two people,
You mean Hanna-Barbera?
Hanna-Barbera,
Yeah.
and it got me thinking though about these duos, these famous duos. Um, so let me ask you a little question I've been kicking around. Would you rather be half of a super successful partnership or a sidekick of a super successful person?
I mean, I feel like probably I don't wanna be Flava Flav, you know what I mean?
Mm.
Um, I feel like probably half of I mean, I already am half of a super successful partnership, right? Or am I your sidekick?
I guess that's what the real question is, isn't it? No. Yeah, so you'd rather be the half where
Yeah,
everybody knows who you are, but only with the other person's name also.
Penn and Teller kinda thing, yes.
Sure, sure, sure. Okay, okay. Would you
Shields and Yarnell.
wow. Um probably a future
You remember
doorknob
them?
city. Oh, do I remember them? Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
that's where I first learned about they had a mime.
That's right, they did a pantomime act. Shields and Yarnell.
Yeah, that was great. Would you rather be behind the scenes of a successful person, like an assistant for somebody who was really, really successful, but you were just like assisting them, researching things, helping them out? Or would you rather be the reason for someone's success, but they got all the credit, like a ghostwriter or a joke writer or something where nobody knew who you were? They get all the credit, but you in your mind know that you're the reason for the success.
I think more of the second thing. Like to
Really?
actually be yeah, to be the creative force. And I guess when you said assistant, I thought, no, I don't wanna be an assistant, but a producer. Like, if I was the producer, where does producer lie? Like, you know what I mean? Like, or manager of a famous person.
In both of those scenarios, nobody know you're not famous. Nobody knows who you are. And one though, that you're the real reason for the success. You wouldn't resent the fact that like someone else is getting all the credit for your stuff.
Am I making money?
Yeah, but not nearly as much as the person who's the front person.
But am I making a lot of money? I mean, I could take 10,000,000 and they could have 100.
Okay.
I'd be happy with that.
Okay. As long as we have the parameters here.
I feel like you're about to tell me about some deal you've got in the works.
No, no, I was thinking about I was just thinking about famous duos and how, like with Hanna-Barbera, they were very famous, but only nobody knew one without the other. And I got to thinking, I wonder how that would feel about being half of a very successful team, but only people only knew you with the other person's name, wouldn't even
Right.
know you hardly without that, and how that would
Yeah.
feel, and if you would resent that, and if you would resent the other person. And I've been talking to other people, and people have different ideas about that, and when you put fame to it, I think that adds another layer too. Some people are comfortable with fame. Some people, I think, would rather be behind the scenes and not deal with fame or anything like that.
Yeah, given the choice between, uh, money and fame, I'd take money.
I'd rather be rich and not famous than famous and not rich. Famous and not rich or infamous, I think the worst thing would be to be infamous and poor, right?
Right, right.
Or the guy that jumped in the Bass Pro Shops tank.
Right, right.
Yeah.
That's was that
Hey,
you?
he's not making a lot of money off of that, but everyone knows who he is, right? All right, well, I'm gonna tell you about another duo today.
Okay.
Like I said, working my way through that list, 2 at a
But I'll
time
only
now.
know one of these 2 people
No, you'll
by
know
name?
both of them, and you wouldn't know them
Ah,
without the other probably. They're
ah,
just inextricably linked. They were both born in the 1940s,
okay.
and one of them died in 1999, and the other died in 2013. And they had a number of different TV shows with different names, but basically the same format, starting on PBS for years, and then got syndicated later on after that.
On PBS. McNeil Lehrer?
Oh, that's a good guess, but no. No, that's a good
Is it
guess.
is it a news program?
No.
Okay. What kinda show did they have on PBS? Like, what was the
Well, if I told you that would give it away, um, but
'cause I don't really think there's variety shows on PBS.
no. And you might not even remember that it started on PBS. You might have remembered the more of syndicated version of the shows. Um, but
Were they American?
they were American. In fact, they were both from the city of Chicago.
Oh.
They were both newspaper men writing in rival newspapers, one for the Chicago Tribune and the other for the Chicago Sun-Times. They were rivals until the one day a week that they would meet and record their show.
Oh, Siskel and Ebert.
Siskel and Ebert. You remember these guys?
Yes.
Remember these
Yes.
guys?
Oh, yeah. Actually, if you get on YouTube, there are you can watch the original review they did of Star Wars in 1977.
Really? Did they like it?
They did. They did.
They both did?
Um, and and this was before, it was sort of like a default setting to like it, right? This was
Right.
right when it came out,
Right when it
and so
came
they were
out.
talking about it as a, kind of a Western and having all the
Mhm.
plot points of a Western and it being, really fun and entertaining. And yeah, I just recently saw that because I get a lot of Star Wars stuff in my YouTube feed. So
We're going to talk about the way they reviewed movies and kind of their philosophy and their relationship with each other. But before we get started on that, to what extent do you use ratings, just in general? Restaurant ratings, movie ratings, Yelp reviews. Are you into ratings before or do you like to try things with no input?
probably more and more I count on ratings. Yeah. I'll look and see what's being said, product reviews, especially like on Amazon or Home Depot or Best Buy. I'll kind of read the best one and the worst one just to get a sense of what's up. And I have stopped buying. I've not purchased something online because of review.
So you're not as concerned with a 1-star rating or a 3-star rating, or something wouldn't keep you from it if you read a 3-star review of the movie or anything?
I write quite a few reviews on like Google. You can write Google reviews, and I feel like I only write them when I feel really strongly about someplace, good or bad. So I tend to give either 1 star or 5-star reviews of restaurants or service at a, or, if you go zip lining, I think I wrote one for a zip lining place we went to once because they were so awesome and so nice. Um, and so, um, it's very rare that somebody, unless it's their job, just writes a review that is just middle of the road, like, "Yeah, it was okay." I mean, you wouldn't go to a restaurant and think that, and then give it a you know, go out and make the time to write a review, would you?
No, probably not.
Unless you had really high expectations and it didn't meet it. Like, if you thought this is gonna be the best thing ever, it's really expensive, it's gonna be really nice, and then it was just kinda mediocre, then you might give it a
Right.
3-star review saying, "Yeah, it was okay, but."
And that was kinda Roger Ebert's philosophy when it came to watching movies. He says, if you're watching a certain kinda horror movie, you're not comparing it to Citizen Kane, you're comparing it to the best horror movie you've ever seen. So you should take that all in context. Take put context in when you're reading these reviews. Both Siskel and Ebert, like I said, were writing for rival newspapers in Chicago, and they both gave star reviews. I think it was 0 to 4 or 1/2 to 4 stars. But on the show, do you know what they used?
It was thumbs up or thumbs down,
Thumbs up,
right?
thumbs down, and they actually ended up, I don't know if trademark's the right word, but they actually had intellectual property with the thumbs up, thumbs down that other movie review shows weren't allowed to use that. That was like owned by them, the whole
Wow.
thumbs up, thumbs down. And there's even a great Sesame Street episode where Siskel and Ebert are trying to explain to Elmo and I think it's Elmo or maybe it's Oscar and Telly the monster about what the thumbs down up thumbs down meant. How when your thumbs up, it's pointed upwards, so that meant good. And they were explaining and then the monsters were telling them they should have a thumb sideways. Way to
Right.
and then they got in a big argument. Siskel and Ebert got in an argument about whether some thumb sideways was appropriate, and they started yelling at each other.
I have to say, thumbs up, thumbs down it's a double-edged sword, right? On one hand, it doesn't leave a lot of nuance to say, well, I like these things about it. I didn't like these things. But also on the other hand, it's very definitive, right? It's you got to appreciate just should I say it or not? Just I need a one-word answer, yes or no.
I agree, and I don't think sometimes nuance isn't what's needed. Just should I go see this thing? You know? And in fact, Ebert used to be critical of Siskel, saying, Gene always it's Gene Siskel and Roger Ebert, if I haven't said already. He'd say Gene needs to like the whole movie before he gives it a thumbs up. And I can tell you to go see the movie if there's parts of it that I don't like, that it's worth your time anyway. So they disagreed a little bit about what constituted a thumbs up or thumbs down. But I kind of like the thumbs up, thumbs down. I mean, I think it worked at least in that TV format. Maybe if I'm reading a longer, more thought out review, I would be looking for nuance, but I kinda like that thumbs up, thumbs down, and it was so quick. These hits were like 4 or 5 minutes on each movie, thumbs up, thumbs down, move on to the next movie. They do 4 or 5 movies in a show, and then they sometimes have the dog of the week where they'd show you a movie that was really bad, but you kinda already knew it was bad going into it, you know?
Yeah, and the thing is if you see a review with 2 thumbs up, then you're pretty confident that it's gonna be a good movie, right?
Especially 2 people that don't agree on a lot of things. I think that's what
Yeah.
kind of where the magic is these guys fight about a lot of things, and most of the reviews, I think, were probably mixed, and so if they both like it, chances are I'm probably gonna like it too, and the thing is, by watching the show, and this is the way it is with any kind of review, this is what I don't like about Yelp, is that for me on reviews, I like to get to use people that I trust over and over. Like, this person's never steered me wrong, or this person doesn't have good taste. In Yelp, it's just random people and a different person every time.
Yeah, but where Yelp works and Google works is in the wisdom of the crowd, right?
Yeah,
And so
thousands of
I
people, right.
if you got thousands of reviews and it trends towards one direction or the other, you can probably count on it being that. If it has 5 reviews and it
Right.
trends toward one direction or the other, then you can't really trust it.
Yeah, I agree completely. Well, let me tell you a little bit about these guys separately, and then we'll talk about their work together. So, Gene Siskel, he was the skinny guy. If you're trying to picture who these guys are, and hopefully you've seen these guys before, but there was kind of a skinny one and a portly one. And Gene Siskel was born 1946, and he was actually orphaned as a child and moved in with his aunt and uncle at 9 years old. Gene Siskel experienced a lot of anti-Semitism as well growing up, but went to Yale University, got a degree in philosophy, and graduated in 1967, and went almost right away and got a job at the Chicago Tribune, and did a lot of film criticism, which at the time, film criticism was pretty highbrow.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
in fact, film criticism was probably pretty new. Um, Art criticism was what was probably in vogue, and film was starting to be in the late '60s was becoming more of an art that was more respected. Roger Ebert, the aforementioned portly one, went to University of Illinois. He ended up getting a he was an English major, though. He got a master's degree at University of Cape Town, started actually in the PhD English
Wait, Cape
program.
Town, South Africa?
Yeah.
Huh,
Started
okay.
in the PhD program at University of Chicago. He wanted to be a writer. He got a job at the Chicago Sun-Times just to kinda support his school, support his writing. He actually wrote some really trashy movies back in the '70s. He wrote with Russ Meyer, who was like an X-rated, not porn, but like they had X-rated movies back then that were kind of just wild and raunchy, but they're not like porn. Um, but he used to write all these really far out movies, and Roger Ebert helped him out and wrote a movie called Beyond the Valley of the Dolls. It was
Oh,
ab
yeah.
Yeah, and then
I've heard of that.
Beneath the Valley of the Ultra Vixens. Do you remember that? You know what that
I've heard
movie?
of that, yep, yep.
Yeah, he helped write the screenplay on that, and he actually even wrote a movie called Who Killed Bambi, which was supposed to be the Sex Pistols version of Hard Day's Night. They were trying to get the Sex Pistols to kind of be more movie stars and follow the Beatles path, and he wrote this movie, but it was never released, because, well, Grace Kelly was on the board of Fox, and, Fox was gonna try to release this movie, and she said, "No way, that's the most repulsive, band I've ever seen in my life. We're not releasing this movie." So nobody's ever seen this movie, but the script has been floating around the internet for
Who Killed Bambi?
yeah,
So wait, it was gonna be the Sex Pistols as acting as like, it wasn't a documentary about them,
no, it was
it
gonna
was
be like Hard Day's Night,
like,
where
say
it's
oh, yeah, or didn't the Beatles do one called Help as well? Like,
right,
where they
yeah.
were characters in it? Okay.
Yeah, I think that's the idea behind this, Sex Pistols movie, but like I said, they filmed I think they filmed 3 days, and none of it included any, Sex Pistols concert footage, and I don't know if any of that footage exists, but I know the script exists, so I think it was
Wow.
really a bad movie. So, he eventually had to kinda quit his education, was too expensive, and he kinda got into the newspaper writing, so he was
This
the
is Roger
Roger
Ebert
Ebert,
still.
they were both, so now they're both writers at rival papers, and Chicago is a great newspaper city. Remember newspapers, Kelly?
I wasn't a big newspaper guy. I did like to read the comics, and I did like to read Dave Barry. Like, Dave Barry always had his little article, comedic article.
Sure. I was a big newspaper guy.
But, yeah, I know some people that, like, got the newspaper every day and read it every day
As me.
or on the weekends, and maybe got more than one newspaper.
Oh, yeah.
I think for a while, we were getting, in Houston, both the Chronicle and the Post. Um, not because I don't think anybody in my family ever really read it other than, like, the weekend editions. So
Really?
we would remember Parade magazine,
Oh, yeah.
the newspaper? Anyway, yes, I do remember newspapers, and then, what a great thing for lining your bird cage or your guinea pig cage.
So in big cities like Chicago, they'd have multiple newspapers, and at the time in the '70s, there was kinda 2 big papers, the Tribune and the Sun-Times. So if you got the Tribune, you flip to the movie section or the entertainment section, and you'd see Gene Siskel's review on the movies that just came out. If you got the Sun Times, you'd flip to the entertainment section, you'd see Roger Ebert's reviews. And somebody had the genius idea to put these guys together on a TV show and they who clearly didn't see eye to eye, didn't really even like each other, and let the sparks fly. Now, Roger Ebert was a great writer. Like I said, he was English literature person. He was writing screenplays, even though they were kind of trashy, but he was a good writer. He actually won the Pulitzer Prize for criticism in 1975, and I think
Wow.
Gene Siskel always kind of resented that and thought that other that that just was jealous of that. So I started the show together on the local Chicago PBS station, and it was called and this isn't a
Siskel
great
and
title.
Ebert?
No, this isn't a great title. Doesn't really roll off the tongue. It was called Opening Soon at a Theater Near You.
Wow.
They didn't
Yeah.
really workshop that title at all. I feel like we really workshopped Dirt Nap City.
Right, dying soon at a theater near you.
Right, so it was called Opening Soon at a theater near you from 75 to 77. I do not remember that version.
I don't either.
Then they renamed it Sneak Previews, and that's when I got on board. Like 1978, they called it Sneak Previews, and I
Okay.
used to watch. I found it. I think it came on after Monty Python or before Monty Python, and that's
On PBS
yeah, that was the only reason I had to watch PBS in '78.
in Houston, Channel 8.
Sure. And it was just 2 guys talking about movies. There was nothing flashy about them. I was probably not ever gonna see most of those movies. A lot of them were R-rated movies, a lot of them were boring movies that a eight-year-old kid, but I remember being really attracted to watching these 2 grown-ups just kinda yell at each other and, call each
Would they
other.
get that worked up?
They did, actually,
I
they
don't
did.
really
I
remember.
mean,
I did
probably
watch the show, but I don't ever remember them, like, really going off on each other much.
they did, but it was more subtle than you'd see today with, like, Fox News where people are just, yelling at each other and screaming, and it wasn't like that. But you could tell, I could tell as a little kid, that these guys had issues with each other, and they thought that the other one was just dead wrong about whatever it is that they were talking about. And I used to love that. Like I said, I wasn't watching to see whether or not I should go to these movies. I was watching because I liked watching these guys argue. And I think part of it was they were kind of uh uh civil to each other, but really had some
Almost
pretty
passive aggressive,
yeah,
huh?
very. Yeah, 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 yeah. 1982 they syndicated this show and renamed it At the Movies.
Oh, yes, I remember that. That's the one I remember.
And then they had a dispute with with the syndication company, moved syndication companies, and then they titled their show Siskel and Ebert and the Movies.
Oh, it wasn't Siskel and Ebert at the
And weren't
movies.
allowed to call it At the Movies. They called it Siskel and Ebert and the Movies. And that was
Ah,
actually from 1986 to 1999. The show won
wow.
7 Emmy awards. So they were together from
13 years of that one.
of that one. So they
So
were
wait,
together
so
from
99.
75 to 99. So a quarter century together.
Wow. Man, how did they do it?
So Roger Ebert said his philosophy was it's not what a movie is about. It's how it's about what it's about. That's what he thought film criticism was all about. Was trying to explain how it's about what it's about. Tell you why. And to do so in like I said 4 minutes and having to split that 4 minutes between 2 people probably made it look easier than it actually was. They did not like each other though. In fact, there's a great I shouldn't say there's a great book. I have not read this book because it just came out about a month ago about these 2 and about how they did not like each other. And that book has a great title. You know what the title? Would you call a book about Siskel and Ebert not liking each other?
Critical something or another.
It's better than that, dude.
What?
Opposable Thumbs.
Oh, wow.
It's a
With the
great
whole
title.
thumbs up. Yeah,
2
yeah,
words, you know exactly what it's about. Opposable
yeah.
Thumbs. So I can't wait to dive into this book. Um, but it's about how Siskel and Ebert changed movies forever by Matt Singer. I can't wait to dive into this. But they really didn't like each other, and they didn't rehearse the show at all. So when they rolled camera, they did not know what the other kind of like the show. They did not know what the other one was going to say.
They actually didn't even know what movie one of them didn't know what movie they were
They had to
reviewing. He
guess.
had to give clues, right?
They also though champion small independent movies, and I think that was another thing, especially being on PBS, that like I never would have known about a movie like My Dinner with Andre. That's not something you're
Right.
going to see at the big Metroplex
Art films.
movie or whatever. Yeah, art films. Uh, but when you talk to one about the other, they would never say that they didn't like each other. They would talk about. Well, let me read you this. This is what Roger Ebert said, "We had a lot of big fights. We were people who came together one day a week, and the other 6 days we were competitors on 2 daily newspapers and 2 different television stations. So there was a lot of competition and a lot of disagreement. Gene Siskel and I were like tuning forks. Strike one, and the other would pick up the same frequency. When we were in a group together, we were always intensely aware of one another. Sometimes this took the form of camaraderie, shared opinions, sometimes hostility, but we were aware. If something happened that we both thought was funny but weren't supposed to, God help us if one caught the other one's eye. We almost always thought the same things were funny. This may be the best sign of intellectual communion. So they respected each other,
Hmm,
kind of. But I want you to
yeah.
play clip B and tell me if these sound like guys that are friendly to one another. This is let me set this up. This is them recording a promo for their show.
Sound a little excited, Gene.
Sound less excited, Roger. That's why we're redoing it, because of what you did. It's Thriller Week on Siskel and Ebert at the movies, and we've got three new ones.
And the movies, not at the movies. And that's why we're doing it this time.
It's Thriller Week on Siskel and Ebert in the movies, and we've got three new ones.
Dennis Quaid in The Big Easy. Michael Caine in The Fourth Protocol. And Kevin Costner and Gene Hackman in No Way Out.
That's this week on Siskel and Ebert and the movies. And the asshole.
Great.
And that's Roger.
Wow.
So
Yeah,
that's
they
they get on
they
each
weren't
other's nerves.
chuckling. You know, sometimes when you riff on somebody like that, you're kinda laughing and having fun. It sounded like some tension there.
Well, and the visual of this is great because they're both one is kind of they're one's sitting and one's kind of uh kneeling in the chair, and they're both looking at the camera, but they're not looking at each other. And sometimes when you aren't looking at each other, you can be a little more uh, uh cross in the way you say things, you know. And I thought that was pretty funny.
Yeah, it was awesome.
Yeah, there's more of that. If you look on YouTube, there's more of those kind of guys just kind of getting on each other's nerves.
What do you search for to find that, Alex? Siskel and Ebert wanna kill each other?
Siskel and Ebert fights,
Yeah.
you know,
Alright.
they never got physical though that I know of. Some of the movies that Gene Siskel loved, he loved. I think his favorite movie was Fargo.
Okay. Good
And
movie.
loved also Hoop Dreams, and he loved Saturday Night Fever. Remember the John Travolta movie from the
Yeah.
in fact, he loved it so much that he actually bought the suit, the white suit, the famous John Travolta white suit. He bought that at an auction.
Oh, the actual real one that John Travolta wore.
Yeah, he bought that. Yeah,
Wow.
not a replica.
This was Gene Siskel.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
I
The
don't know
movie prop.
if he wore it, but yeah, he bought it as a movie prop. And then Roger Ebert loved 2001: Space Odyssey and Raging Bull. Those are probably two of his favorite movies. Though it's funny to see the movies, especially with the passage of time, to see the movies that they hated that ended up being kind of thought of as good movies. So like Gene Siskel hated Poltergeist,
Hmm.
Scarface, Beverly Hills Cop, Terminator, Thelma and Louise, and Silence of the Lambs. And some of those
Wow.
won like Oscars, you know?
Yeah. I mean, those are all movies that people still talk about today.
Right, right, right. Roger Ebert hated Dead Poet Society, Gladiator, Fight Club, Elephant Man, Clockwork Orange, Raising Arizona, Usual Suspects, Fast Times at Ridgemont High. They definitely they would see the movie before other people, so they weren't influenced by what other people had to had to say about it. One of my favorite clips that I want you to play though is the review for the movie Home Alone 3. Did you know there was a Home Alone 3?
No.
So, you know Home Alone 1, right? Kind of a Christmas classic.
I don't know
You
if I've ever actually seen it, but I'm
Oh.
familiar with yeah, it's Macaulay Culkin doing mean things to, mean guys.
So these movies get played a lot of around the holiday time at my house. So the Home Alone 1 and 2 are just kind of Christmas staples. Home Alone 3, though, didn't have any of the same people that made the first two, including Macaulay Culkin. And it was just kind of a direct to DVD, cheap attempt at reliving, you
Cashing in
know,
on the name.
totally cashing in. But I don't think any of the same people were involved at all. And actually, Roger Ebert liked this movie better than the first two, which, if you like the first two movies, just doesn't even make sense.
Movie had a theme song. It would be "Dumbbells Keep Falling on My Head." The story makes no sense. I feel for every family that's going to be suckered into seeing Home Alone 3.
Now, this is going to astound you, but I'm giving the movie thumbs up.
It does astound me. Are you okay?
Better than you were the day that you liked Starship Troopers.
Okay. Oh, no.
I'll tell you why I
that was
like the movie.
exciting.
This movie empowers little kids. This is the one where they finally got it right. I liked it better than the other two.
Than the original Home Alone?
Little kids love the idea that they can somehow affect the outcome, that they can have power over grown-ups, that they can defend themselves and be smart and think about things.
He hammers
and in
thugs
this
in the
movie,
first
it's
one.
not as violent as the second one. The kid is charming. He really is a good little actor. And the plot is smarter than the other
We completely
movies.
disagree. I thought the kid was generic mop top, and I thought that the Home
come
Alone...
on, that kid?
Yes.
Come on.
Yeah, there are only two kids.
He's very good.
Culkin's better. And the other thing is, it's the same plot as the first one, only more bumps to the head.
The second, they're all the same plot.
But what you just said, that this one empowers them more than the other one. Absolutely not
That's
true.
the secret of that's why kids love these movies, because they love the fantasy that they have power.
But it's overdone. Overkill here.
Not for
Overkill.
not for
Not
an
for you.
All right. So question for you. Was that from the episode that actually aired, or was
Yeah.
that like outtakes?
No, that wasn't an outtake. That's the kind of stuff they would do when they, they would just.
Yeah, I guess I don't remember that about them. I just remember them being nerdy dudes that watched movies and gave it a thumbs up. Or
That's
thumbs
what I
down.
loved about it, though, is that they would bring up like he says, well, not as dumb as when you like Starship
Right.
Troopers. Like that was probably years earlier, and he
Right.
like had filed that away. You know,
I'm going to use that.
Roger Ebert had a really fun way with words, though, and when he didn't like a movie, he would really eviscerate it, especially in print. One of the more popular Roger Ebert pans was from a movie called North. Have you ever heard of that movie?
No.
I think it had like Julia Louis-Dreyfus and Jason Alexander, but it was like during Seinfeld, or maybe it had one of them in it. Not the, I don't know. I don't remember who was in it, but it was a bad, like I think everyone hated the movie. And
The rom-com?
no, I think it was supposed to be a comedy. I don't know. But here's his review of this movie. I hated this movie. Hated this movie. Hated it. Hated every simpering, stupid, vacant, audience insulting moment of it. Hated the sensibility that thought anyone would like it. Hated the implied insult to the audience by its belief that anyone would be entertained by it. And actually, he ended up writing a book called "I Hated This Movie" and it was a collection of all of the pans of movies that
Wow.
he didn't like. The other funny one is there was a movie called Mad Dog Time that came out in 1996. Have you ever heard of that movie?
Never heard of it.
I don't think it was very popular. He said, "This is the first movie I've seen that does not improve on the sight of a blank screen viewed for the same length of time." Well, I've seen bad movies before, but usually they made me care about how bad they were. Watching Mad Dog Time is like waiting for the bus in a city where you're not sure if they have a bus line. And he said that the film should be cut up to provide free ukulele picks for the poor.
Wow. I guess celluloids, ukulele picks.
That's some genius criticism there.
Free ukulele picks.
Well, these guys they would appear on talk shows together. You can see
Yeah.
clips of them on Johnny Carson or Conan O'Brien, and they really did everything together. And I do think over time they had this. You couldn't say one without the other. They were just linked. So I think they ended up kind of liking each other, respecting each other, whatever. Unfortunately, Gene Siskel was diagnosed with a brain tumor in 1998. He actually was so committed to the show that he did the show from his hospital room on the phone,
Wow.
after having brain surgery. He announced a leave of absence in February of 1999, but then died a couple of weeks later. Well, Roger Ebert continued to do the show with different guest hosts. It was never really the same for him, but he did the show for a while. In 2002, though, he got thyroid cancer. I don't know if you remember this. And then he had to have his salivary glands removed. They had to remove his jaw, and ultimately that took away his voice. In 2006, he couldn't speak. And So he
Oh,
was still
man.
able to write. He was a great writer and he still wrote movie reviews. He still did his job. And then I remember seeing, I think it was on Oprah or something around 2000. When did he died in 2013. So I think around 2008 or so, they came up with the technology where they were able to, because they had thousands of hours of his voice. They were able to use his voice and then have the electronic voice that he used be his voice because they just had so much of that. Of course, the technology wasn't, this is 20 years ago. This technology
Yeah,
wasn't like it is today. But in the last few years of his life, he was able to speak with his electronic voice rather than just like a computer voice. It sounded
right.
like him, and he was able to still kind of do some talk to his wife, you know? I don't think he did full shows or anything, but he was able to talk to his wife with his voice, and he finally, like I say, he finally passed in 2013, and, today, there's the film center at University of Chicago is the Gene Siskel Film Center, and, they have a statue of Roger Ebert in Champaign, Illinois, at the University of Illinois in front of a movie theater, and it's 3 chairs, movie chairs, and he's in the middle one, and he's giving a thumbs up. It's a statue of him with the thumbs up,
Nice.
and then, at the Cannes Film Festival, they call their conference center the Roger Ebert Conference Center, which is probably kind of the ultimate honor that you can get,
Yeah,
at
yeah, for the most prestigious film festival.
yeah, yeah. But, I think today when there I don't think anyone's filled their shoes. I really don't. I don't think there's anybody who gives that kind of film criticism unless you can read film criticism, which is great. A lot of times though, these days that takes the form of recaps where they just tell you
Yeah,
everything that happened and then they kind of give
yeah.
you their, but I haven't seen anything, there's nobody out there that I trust like I used to trust them in terms of giving me a non-spoiler, pretty concise idea of whether or not I should go see this film.
Thumbs up or thumbs down.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, back to your original question that you asked me about, would I rather be the, behind the scenes person or the partner, or how does that all how does that relate to Siskel and Ebert?
Well, I think just the idea that there was no such thing as like a Gene Siskel fan. Like it was always Siskel and Ebert, you know? So, they were inexorably linked, and I think that the deal that they made was even though they didn't like each other, they were linked and they weren't gonna go out on their own. I mean, these days when there are successful duos, sometimes one of the people in the duo thinks, "This is because of me," and they go out and try to do it on their own. And I think in today's world, they would have probably both split up, both had a podcast or a website or whatever and tried to do their thing on their own and think, why do I need this other person? And I think they understood that the magic was them disagreeing with each other or the
Yeah,
power of them agreeing with each other, that they needed
the
each other,
chemistry.
right? The chemistry, they needed each other. And so I don't think there's a lot of that these days. There's just not a lot of those two-person teams that stick around for that long.
Yeah, yeah. So, I could see with the 2 of them being partners at the time that they were. Of course, like you said, today everybody's got a podcast, everybody's, getting clips on YouTube, everybody's, doing all those things. At that time too, they also had a unique platform in being on television. That wasn't something that everybody got to do, right? You didn't even if you were a great writer, you didn't always get a job at the Chicago newspaper and end up getting a television show. But I do agree that you don't really think of Ebert. If somebody just said Ebert to me, I wouldn't know what you meant out of context.
You'd say, "Oh yeah, of Siskel and Ebert."
You know what? If you said Siskel, I might say that, but if you just said Ebert, I might, like not hearing the Siskel and in front of it, I might not even make that connection. So I see what you mean about them being tied at the hip.
I saw an interview with them on Conan O'Brien where they were talking about how it became Siskel and Ebert, and they said they flipped a coin, and Ebert lost. And the deal was they were going to do that for 2 years and then switch it up. Well, of course, by that
Yeah,
time, why would you switch it? People know you as this. But at the
right.
time, and this was like in the late 90s, Ebert was trying to get the crowd to say it sounds just as good, Ebert and Siskel, and they had the crowd chant Ebert and Siskel, Ebert, and he was loving it. He was smiling, he was laughing. Siskel was annoyed. You could tell he was annoyed at the notion that it would be Ebert and Siskel, even as a bit.
But, it is funny. I don't know if it's because your brain is just used to one way, or if there is actually a better sound for the 2 words together. Like Siskel and Ebert to me sounds better than Ebert and Siskel. But is that just because my brain's used to it, or is that because there's some sort of phonetics to it that sound better? I don't know.
I guess we'll never know.
Yeah. And the other thing I was gonna say, about them as a duo, not going out on their own necessarily, it's kinda like a band. Would you rather be a a person who is in a really popular band, but nobody really knows the individual members, or I mean, like Third Eye Blind, right? There's a great '90s band that did a lot of really good things. Most people don't know the names of any of the band members, but they know the band. But then you get just individuals, Justin Bieber or Beyonce or whoever, who are single person stars, and you don't know who necessarily Beyonce's drummer is, right? So, um, I don't know. I kind of like the second or the first scenario of being in a band where nobody knows your name. You're fairly anonymous, and but when you say the band name, everybody's like, "Whoa, oh yeah, that's awesome." I love that band, but I have no idea who you are.
But I think though in this case too, they were individually, at least they had their newspaper subscribers. So they did have some name recognition. They didn't just start together known as like the movie guys. They
Right.
each had separate recognition and then maybe just in Chicago. But then when you put it all together, that made I don't think they would have been as popular as known as like the movie reviewers and the movie dudes or something.
Yeah, and that's why when, we started talking about podcasts and you were gonna do Smilin' Alex Smilem, I said, "No, no,
You know,
no.
like that.
It's gonna be better if it's, Dirt Nap City," and,
Yeah.
leave yourself out of it.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, man. Well, that's Siskel and Ebert and the movies at the movies. You,
In the
you caught
movies,
that when Ebert
on the
did not
movies.
like that. It must be hard to say Siskel and Ebert and the movies. It
You
just
have to
doesn't,
pause a lot. There had to be some
especially
pauses.
especially when your show used to be called At the Movies.
Oh, yeah. Well, you heard in their outtake, they couldn't do it, right? It was too deeply ingrained. Ebert and Siskel in the movies. Thanks. Good night.
Well, if you would like to hear the modern version of two idiots arguing about a movie, check out our appearance on It's My Screen Time too, where we debate the merits of the movie Wonka.
Yes. Classic.
It's our take on Siskel and Ebert in the movies.
Yeah, that's about as smart as the time you did a podcast about Pilates.
Bye, everybody.